A true story that changed everything I thought I knew about attraction after 50. 3 months ago, I watched my best friend Marcus blow the biggest romantic opportunity of his life, and he had no idea it even happened. Marcus, 58, recently divorced, successful architect, sharp dresser, great sense of humor, the kind of guy women actually notice. We were at Sarah's gallery opening, Sarah being his neighbor for 2 years, the widow who always seemed to find reasons to chat with him in the hallway, who brought him homemade soup when he had the flu, who asked his opinion on everything from paint colors to vacation destinations. That night, Sarah looked stunning. Black dress, confident smile, but there was something vulnerable in her eyes when she approached us. She touched Marcus's arm gently and said, "I'm so nervous about tonight. What do you honestly think? Am I crazy for doing this at my age?" Marcus smiled warmly and gave her the standard supportive friend response. "Sarah, you're incredibly talented. This gallery is lucky to have you." She held his gaze for a long moment, then said softly, "Would you stay close tonight? I could use a familiar face in the crowd." "Of course," Marcus replied. "That's what friends are for." I watched Sarah's face change. Just for a second, something flickered and dimmed. She smiled, thanked him, and spent the rest of the evening networking with strangers. Marcus was proud of himself for being such a good friend. Sarah went home alone, convinced that 2 years of subtle signals had been her imagination. That's when I realized we've all been playing by rules that no longer exist. The awakening. Why everything changed at 50. After that night, I started paying attention differently. I began watching how women our age communicate interest. And what I discovered shocked me. The dating game didn't end at 50. It evolved into something far more sophisticated, far more nuanced, and far more easily missed. These women aren't playing hard to get. They're being strategically careful. After decades of marriages, divorces, disappointments, and life lessons, they've learned that direct pursuit often backfires. Instead, they've mastered the art of the gentle probe, the strategic question, the carefully placed invitation disguised as casual conversation. But here's the devastating truth. 97% of men our age are completely blind to these signals. Not because we're stupid, but because we're listening for the wrong language. We're waiting for the obvious signs of our youth while missing the sophisticated signals of our peers. The 7 questions that change everything. Question 1. What's your secret? When Elena asked this question to my friend Robert at their book club, he laughed and said, "No secrets here. What you see is what you get." Wrong answer. Elena had just spent 30 minutes listening to Robert talk passionately about restoring vintage motorcycles, his volunteer work with veterans, and his recent trip to photograph wildlife in Alaska. She wasn't asking if he had secrets. She was saying, "You're fascinating. There's depth to you. What drives this passion? What makes you different from every other man I meet?" The right response. I guess my secret is that I finally stopped trying to impress people and started doing things that genuinely excite me. Life's too short to be anyone but yourself. Elena later told me she'd been hoping for exactly that kind of self-awareness. Instead, she heard a man who couldn't recognize his own worth. Question 2. Why do you think some people find love later in life while others don't? This isn't a philosophical discussion. When Margaret asked this during a dinner party, she was really asking David, "Do you believe in second chances? Are you open to love at this stage? Do you think it's possible?" For us, David gave her a sociology lecture about changing relationship patterns and divorce statistics. Margaret nodded politely and changed the subject. What she'd hoped to hear was something like, "I think the people who find love later are the ones brave enough to stay vulnerable. Even after they've been hurt, they're the ones who believe their best chapters might still be unwritten." That would have been an invitation for Margaret to share her own hopes, her own fears, her own willingness to take that risk. Question 3. Do you ever get lonely? This question has layers. When Patricia asked this to James during their weekly coffee meetings, she wasn't making small talk about his social calendar. She was asking, do you have room in your life for companionship? Are you emotionally available? Would you welcome someone who wants to fill that space? James deflected with humor. Lonely. With my dog and Netflix, I'm practically social. But Patricia was sharing something vulnerable. She was saying, I get lonely too. Maybe we could be lonely together. Except then, we wouldn't be lonely anymore. The conversation she was hoping for might have gone, sometimes, I've built a good life, but there are moments, watching a beautiful sunset, reading something moving, experiencing something wonderful, when I find myself wishing I had someone special to share it with. Do you know that feeling? Question 4. What would you do differently if you could do it all again? When Linda asked this of Thomas at their community center art class, she wasn't requesting his life story. She was asking, have you learned from your past? Are you wise enough now to do better? If you had another chance at love, would you handle it differently? Thomas went into detail about career choices and financial decisions. He completely missed the emotional subtext. Linda was hoping to hear something like, I'd be braver about expressing my feelings. I'd pay better attention to the people who mattered. I'd stop waiting for the perfect moment and realize that most moments can be perfect if you're with the right person. That would have opened the door for Linda to share her own regrets, her own lessons learned, and her own hopes for doing things differently this time. Question 5. What's the most romantic thing anyone's ever done for you? This isn't nostalgia. When Catherine asked this during their third dinner together, she was asking William, what makes you feel loved? How do you receive affection? What would make your heart race at this stage of your life? William told a funny story about a college girlfriend's grand gesture that ended in disaster. He missed the point entirely. Catherine was asking for his emotional blueprint, hoping to understand how to reach him. The conversation she was hoping for. The most romantic moments weren't the big gestures. They were the quiet ones. Someone remembering exactly how I like my coffee, leaving a note in my book, playing a song because they knew it would make me smile. Romance at our age isn't about dramatics. It's about paying attention to the details that show someone really sees you. Question 6. What's something you've never told anyone? This is an intimacy test. When Diane asked this of Michael during a quiet walk through the park, she was saying, I want to know the real you. I'm ready for depth. Are you comfortable with vulnerability? Michael made a joke about his secret junk food addiction, but Diane was offering to create a deeper connection, hoping he'd meet her there. A moment of real sharing might have been, I've never told anyone how scared I was during my divorce. Not scared of being alone, scared that I'd never feel truly known by someone again, that I'd lost my chance at that kind of connection. That kind of honesty would have given Diane permission to share her own fears, her own longings, her own willingness to take emotional risks. Question 7. If you could wake up anywhere in the world tomorrow, where would it be? This isn't travel planning. When Joan asked this of Richard during their wine tasting, she was asking, what are your dreams? Are you still planning adventures? Would there be room in those dreams for someone else? Richard listed practical destinations based on weather and cost, but Joan was hoping to hear something like, honestly, I'd want to wake up somewhere beautiful with someone I care about. The location matters less than the company. I've seen amazing places alone, and they always felt like they were missing something, someone to share the wonder with. That would have been Joan's cue to say, I'd love to share some wonder with you. The real story, why we miss these signals. The truth is, we're afraid of, after 50, rejection feels different, more final, more devastating. So we choose the safety of misunderstanding over the risk of acknowledgement. But here's what I learned watching dozens of these missed connections. These women aren't looking for perfection. They're looking for recognition. They want to know that their interest is noticed, valued, and possibly reciprocated. The transformation, what changes when you start listening? After that gallery opening with Marcus and Sarah, I made a decision. I started listening differently. Not just to words, but to subtext. Not just to questions, but to the hopes behind them. The change was immediate and profound. When women asked me these deeper questions, I began responding to what they were really asking. I started sharing more of myself, being more vulnerable, more present. I stopped trying to be the perfect man and started being the real man. At 56, I'm having the most meaningful conversations, the deepest connections, and the most authentic relationships of my life. Your wake-up call right now. There's probably a woman in your life who's been sending these signals. Maybe it's the neighbor who always finds reasons to chat, the woman at the coffee shop who remembers your order, the book club member who asks for your opinions on everything, the coworker who stays late when you do, just to have a few minutes of conversation. She's not playing games. She's not being coy. She's being careful with her heart while hoping you'll be brave with yours. The question is, will you finally start listening to what she's really asking? Because at our age, second chances don't come around often. But when they do, they're usually standing right in front of us, asking gentle questions and hoping we're finally wise enough to hear what they really mean. The conversation is happening all around you. The only question is, are you ready to join it? The woman you're meant to be with might have already asked you one of these questions. The only question now is, what are you going to do about it?